Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores coming with an interesting Redskins report. First of all, I want to let y'all know that the Air Coryell offense video is like actually for real almost done. Like, y'all will get it by tomorrow as in Thursday or like Friday midday by the latest. It's all just editing now. Everything else is done. Notes, recording, all of that. So it's finally here. I'm sorry it took so long. Just again, y'all know me, man. I gotta put my all into it. I don't want to just come out with some random generic or broad research. I wanted to dive in and like actually watch film on like the Carolina Panthers from last season, the Panthers with Norv Turner, Joe Gibbs with the Redskins, and of course Don Coryell with the Chargers, and even a little bit of the Cardinals. I wanted to make sure I knew what I was talking about. So that video is going to come out to y'all soon. But you know what I'm saying? Most importantly, right now, I want to get to these 5 players who may not make the roster. Some of them are very likely, some not quite likely. But these 5 players are definitely possibilities. And y'all already know, from now on, we got to huddle up before the intro every time. Before we get to the content that y'all came for, of course, I got to let y'all know to go buy the best Redskins merch money can buy. Just hit the link in the description of this video under Go Get Street Scores merch. Also, if you want to become a monthly paid member of the best YouTube channel out here doing it, there's 4 different levels, each with their own great perks, such as a private Redskins and football Discord group, shoutouts in every video and live stream, monthly free merchandise raffles, exclusive badges next to your name in the chats, exclusive gifts, and much more. Just hit the link in the description of this video under Become a Channel Member. Also, if you're interested, please pull up to the Rant with Rico show to call in and let your opinions and questions be heard every Thursday from 7 to 8 p.m. Also, join my live podcast with my boy Shay named Broadcast, where we talk about everything, all sports, culture, music, life, anime, and much more. Every Friday, 8 to 10 p.m. And then, of course, definitely pull up to the Street Scores Full Access live stream, where I reply to every comment every Sunday from 2 to 4 p.m. And all of which I place the links in the description. Now, let's get it. Alright, so first of all, I want to preface this whole video with saying that I have done my research and I have confirmed that rosters are still only 53 player max. The only change with the new CBA is that active game rosters increase from 46 to 48. But like the overall roster that you take on with you after training camp is still 53, not 55, not 57, not any other strange number, 53. I went and looked it up, read it all and everything just to make sure. And even though I'm not doing a 53-man roster breakdown or prediction, I just wanted to make sure I told y'all that before we get into this, just so y'all can know. Now, first up, Bryce, and it hurts my heart to say it, because as far as running backs go, last season we kept 4, but you never know, we could keep 5 this season because of how versatile the players are. But Bryce Love is a possible candidate for getting cut, especially if he isn't able to become healthy by the time training camp comes around or even regular season comes around. You have Darius Geis, Antonio Gibson, Adrian Peterson, who are pretty much locks, especially as long as Darius Geis is healthy. And then you have 2 spots left at most. Last year we only had 4 players, so technically we would only have 1 spot left, but if we have 2 spots left, because Antonio Gibson is so versatile and he doubles as a running back and a receiver, you have Bryce Love, JD Mckissick, and Peyton Barbour. And honestly, for Bryce Love, and thank goodness, it's not very likely for him to get cut, because when in doubt, you just let JD McKissick or Peyton Barbour go, let them sit on the practice squad, and they're much less likely to get picked up by another team than, say, a Bryce Love. So I highly doubt that he will end up getting cut, even if he's not ready to go by training camp or regular season. But still, it's not impossible. I could definitely see a scenario where the Redskins choose to go with a group of healthy players, and then Darius Geis is just on top of the depth chart right now, so of course they're going to go with him. And JD McKissick is a nice third down back to complement Antonio Gibson's versatility, and then Peyton Barbour is a nice first and second down back like Adrian Peterson. He's a nice backup for him, especially assuming that Darius Geis isn't healthy, which I don't. because I love Darius Geis. I believe in him. I believe he'll end up working out. I feel like he'll eventually have a great career and he'll get over these injury woes. That'll just be a thing of the past, something we can laugh about later on in life. But looking at it in a pessimistic view, if Darius Geis isn't ready to go, Peyton Barbour is a nice backup to Adrian Peterson as the first and second down back. So I could definitely see a scenario where Bryce Love doesn't make the 53-man roster, but this is one of those that isn't very likely. Now, some of these coming up are likely to happen. Now we move on to tight end. Last season, we kept 3. You never know. New regime, new head coach, offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator. Anything can happen. Switching from a 3-4 to a 4-3. Switching from the West Coast offense to the Air Coryell offense, which you'll hear more about in much greater detail in the Air Coryell offense video that I'm coming out with within 2 days. But I say all of that to basically say that anything can happen. I mean, the way they prioritize certain positions, they may keep 4 tight ends instead of 3 like the previous regime used to do, where we had Jordan Reed, Vernon Davis, and Jeremy Sprinkle. But assuming that we'll keep 3, because I'm not about to just sit here and guess what the Redskins will keep next season because we don't know for sure. I'm just going to go based off of what teams have done in the past for the Redskins, and last year we kept 3. So assuming that we keep 3, I'm thinking that Thaddeus Moss and Logan Thomas are the most safe. Thaddeus Moss because he's the most sure thing as long as he's healthy. He's the best blocking tight end on our roster day one, and he probably has the best hands. I mean, out of this draft, he was the best blocking tight end, even though he's a little undersized, but it never shows up on film, only in the measurables. And then he never dropped a single pass last season. That tells you everything you need to know. And then Logan Thomas has the most potential. He has the highest ceiling just off of the fact that he's just freakishly athletic. He came out of college as a quarterback, so you never know. He could even be like a reserve quarterback if, say, Dwayne Haskins and Kyle Allen would have both get hurt in the same game, which we hope never happens. I hope we never get to that contingency plan, but that is an added benefit of keeping Logan Thomas on the roster. He technically doubles as a tight end and a quarterback. Not a great quarterback, not really even a good one, but you know what I'm saying? It's better than throwing possibly Tress Way out there to be quarterback or somebody else. Logan Thomas literally was a quarterback throughout college. He switched to tight end at the NFL level. And again, Logan Thomas's potential ceiling are just ridiculous because he's just so freakishly athletic. He's definitely the most athletic tight end on our roster. And then, if we're only going with 3 tight ends, we only have 1 spot left. So the player that I'm mainly talking about at this point, at this part of the video, is Jeremy Sprinkle. I know a lot of y'all aren't big Jeremy Sprinkle fans because of all of the drop passes, but if he can improve his catching, he's actually a pretty good, at least pretty decent dual threat tight end because he can block pretty well. I don't think he can block as well and as consistent as Thaddeus Moss can, but he's definitely by definition a dual threat tight end if he can work on his inconsistent hands, his butterfingers, which is possible. Like if going into this offseason, he's already been declared as a tight end that's gonna make the roster and we're definitely gonna use you in the passing game, he may work on his hands more because last season he was only just the blocking guy and never was really known for running routes and catching passes until Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis both got hurt. And then he was forced into being a dual threat tight end type of role. But now if he has a full off season, especially with this improved coaching staff, you never know. Jeremy Sprinkle might come out here running better routes and having better hands, but you never know. So that's why I'm saying, I say Thaddeus Moss and Logan Thomas are not necessarily locks, but they're the closest 2 guys to it. And then you have Jeremy Sprinkle, who you just never know. You have Hell Hinges, who showed a little something those last 2 games. There's something that we can build on. Richard Rodgers is the vet of the group, but he's injury prone. And then you also have Marcus Ball, who has a little potential to him. So Jeremy Sprinkle may not make the roster, honestly. And that honestly would be some sort of a surprise because he definitely has the best combination of experience and health out of all of the tight ends we currently have on the roster. Richard Rodgers has a lot of experience but can't stay healthy, and then everybody else is just very raw and young. So Jeremy Sprinkle not making the roster honestly would be a surprise, but I could definitely see scenarios where they go Hell Hinges over him or Richard Rodgers for his veteran presence and leadership over him. So that's very interesting to keep an eye on, especially throughout training camp and preseason. And then the wide receivers. And I know a lot of y'all are huge Trey Quinn fans, but it's very possible he may not make the roster. Because in 2019, last season, wide receiver-wise, they kept 6. So assuming that they keep 6, you have Terry McLaurin, Steven Sims, Kelvin Harmon, Antonio Gandy-Golden, who are pretty much locks. And then I feel like Isaiah Wright is even almost a lock mostly because of his return game ability. Him, Antonio Gibson, and Steven Sims will be the best returners on our team as far as punts and kickoffs. But then he also doubles as a pretty good receiver, 6'2", advanced route runner. Definitely has room to improve his route running, but coming out of college, his route running is pretty ahead of what you'd expect, especially from an undrafted free agent. And then he's athletic, shifty, very fast, has pretty good hands. So I kind of expect him to make the roster. And then that just leaves one spot left between Trey Quinn, who could possibly make the roster because we technically need a backup slot receiver to Steven Sims, even though that could be Antonio Gibson. So Antonio Gibson makes it harder for Trey Quinn to make the roster. But then also you have guys like Cam Sims and Emmanuel Hall who have so much potential. Very tall guys that are faster than they should be for their size, especially Emmanuel Hall, where he's just like a freak athlete. He might be the best athlete out of our receiving core. Between him, Terry McLaurin, and Steven Sims, maybe AGG. Emmanuel Hall's athleticism is just something you can't teach. And even though he's relatively injury prone and hasn't been able to stick around on a roster for long, the potential is definitely there, and I can definitely see the Redskins going with him to see what they can get out of him. You have 5 wide receivers that you believe in, and then the last wide receiver spot go to a guy with infinite potential to see if you can coach him up and mold that clay of potential into something great and shiny. And then you also have Jonathan Johnson, who is also a slot receiver type of guy, who's definitely more athletic than Trey Quinn, but also not as good of a route runner and not as good of a catcher as Trey Quinn. And then you also have Cody Latimer, who technically was supposed to be the veteran presence on this team, but you know, with the situation and everything that happened to him, free my boy Cody Latimer, because after hearing why he did everything, I fully understand. But the likelihood of him making the team is very unlikely, especially Ron Rivera with his non-nonsense policy with Monte Nicholson, Quentin Dunbar, Trent Williams, all of those guys are gone. So Trey Quinn is competing against Cam Sims, a team favorite, somebody I really like too, and I would like to see him add weight to see if he can compete for tight end. Emmanuel Hall, who has infinite potential, one of my favorite guys on the team. Jonathan Johnson, who's basically a faster, more athletic, but less refined route running and catching version of Trey Quinn. So he has more potential, but a lower floor. The Redskins may go with him over Trey Quinn just because of his potential. And then you have Cody Latimer. So Trey Quinn is competing against all of those guys, and it's very likely he doesn't make the roster. The team is not attached to him at all. He's a previous regime player and an ex-7th round pick. Teams are not attached to their 7th round picks even when they pick them, let alone a previous regime picked them. And with the way 2019 is looking, I don't see why you would go with anybody that isn't the super athletic high potential guy. If you have any doubt amongst a group of players, why not go with the guy with the most potential and see what you get out of him? And then 2021, if that guy doesn't work out, then go with the safer guy. But I don't see any point in going with the safer guy at any position this season, unless maybe offensive line, just so that we can make sure Dwayne Haskins is able to stay healthy and upright. Other than that, you might as well go with the higher potential, lower floor guy, just to see what you can get out of him. And then 2021, go with the safer guy if you have to, so that we can actually put together wins. And then Morgan Moses, you know what I'm saying? It's quite possible. Not very likely, nowhere near as likely as Trey Quinn, but it's quite possible because offensive tackle wise, they kept 3, kind of 4 if you count Ross Pierschbacher because he's able to play center, guard, and tackle. So kind of 4 if you include Ross Pierschbacher's versatility, but technically 3 definitive tackles were kept on the roster last season. So assuming there's 3, it's going to be Sadiq Charles, Cornelius Lucas, and then 1 spot left. And even though Morgan Moses is clearly the best option day 1 to start out of those 3 guys, even though Cornelius Lucas might have something to say about that because he looked really good for the Bears last year once they finally gave him opportunities. I mean, statistically, he did really well last season as far as allowing pressures and sacks in a starting role in the NFC North. So against the Packers pass rush with the Smiths in Minnesota. So I believe in Cornelius Lucas, but honestly, I prefer him as our swing tackle because he can play both right and left tackle, and he's like a better version of Ty Nsekhe, and I prefer to have 2 other guys starting and then he come and fill in. But Cornelius Lucas easily could start at tackle. I mean, there could be a scenario where Sadiq Charles and Cornelius Lucas starting at some point this season together, especially once Sadiq Charles fully develops and is able to actually go out there and start against real NFL defenses, and we can depend on him to protect Haskins consistently. Or I can even see Cornelius Lucas starting at left tackle and Morgan Moses starting at right tackle. But the reason I say Morgan Moses may not make the roster is because after Sadiq Charles and Cornelius Lucas, who I'm pretty sure will make the roster, Morgan Moses is competing against Jerron Christian, who's the younger, higher potential guy. But as far as what I've seen, Jerron Christian is not the answer. And I just feel like he won't even make the roster this year. They might just be like, Jay Gruden and them tried it. We're not even going to try it. They might try it in training camp. And if he doesn't show any huge improvement from what he's been, then he's pretty much out of here. But then also Morgan Moses, with him making $8 million this year and $9 million this year as far as cap hits, the Redskins may choose Jerron Christian just because he's cheaper. Or they may even go get somebody like a Jason Peters, Donald Penn, or a Kelvin Beachum, who we may be able to depend on more than Morgan Moses, and they may also be cheaper. Now, to be honest, Morgan Moses is nowhere near as terrible as a lot of Redskins fans make him out to be. He's not great. It's hard to even say he's good, but he's not as terrible as everybody makes it seem. Like, at this point, it's kind of propaganda and like a running joke that he's like the worst offensive lineman to ever do it. Like, he's not that bad. Even during the Alex Smith season, he was playing through injuries and holding it down. He was like literally the only starter left between like him and Chase Roulier. And even Chase Roulier was missing some games. I think Morgan Moses started probably every game that Alex Smith season when everybody was hurt. And he was hurt. Both of his legs had different types of injuries, but he played through it. So I respect Morgan Moses. And it annoys me to see those holding penalties after a 30-yard run play, especially how consistent it is, but I don't think he's that bad. But I can definitely see a scenario where the Redskins don't feel like dealing with him, especially since he's an $8 million cap hit this year. So he can be competing against Jerron Christian, who's the higher potential, way lower floor guy, but cheaper. Or somebody that they haven't even signed yet, that's not even on the team yet, who may end up being cheaper and more dependable. So Morgan Moses has a chance of not making the roster. Again, nowhere near as likely as Trey Quinn not making the roster, but it's a possibility. But again, it's a possibility. And then lastly, these off-ball linebackers. And I'm not exactly sure why. I mean, I know he looked like a huge upgrade over Mason Foster, but a lot of y'all love John Bostic. But honestly, there's definitely a scenario where he won't make the team. Of course, just like I said earlier, Ron Rivera and the crew might go with the younger, higher potential guys instead of the safe guys and worry about picking up safe guys to fill holes on the roster 2021 and beyond when their main focus is winning. Right now, their main focus is to put out the best talent and let them learn on the fly. Let them make their mistakes early bumps in the road, all of that type of stuff. Let them learn in real action, real regular season action, not just practice, not just training camp, not just preseason, but let them learn in real games where wins matter, so they can fully develop to their highest potential with pressure on their backs and everything like that, so they can go out and make mistakes early and have film to review so they can correct them early. So I could definitely see a scenario where John Bostic just doesn't make the roster because Ron Rivera and the guys just want to go youth and potential over safe and dependable. Even though John Bostic, in my opinion, isn't as dependable as a lot of y'all think. To me, he's like a jack of all trades. He can play a little bit of Sam, a little bit of Mike, a little bit of Will. But Ryan Anderson and Thomas Davis are definitely better Sam linebackers than him. Shonda Hamilton and Colt Holcomb are definitely better Mike linebackers than him. And Reuben Foster, Khalid Hudson, and Josh Harvey Clemens are definitely better Will linebackers than him, especially when it comes to covering running backs and wide receivers. John Bostic is a guy that you can have in your depth chart that can fill in at any of those positions if an injury were to happen. But again, he's a jack of all trades, a master of none. So the Redskins may go the way that I would go if I were coaching and make sure you have the best player that's best at what he does at his position. Just like that's why the Patriots have had such long-term sustained success for so long, a dynasty, because they get guys that are good to really good at one or two things and make sure they only do that. They don't care about versatility like that. They want guys that are really good at one or two things, and they make sure they are solely responsible for doing those one or two things. And that's why they get so much out of players that really have no household names. So if the Redskins go that route, for Sam linebacker, you have Ryan Anderson, who I feel like has the most potential. And I've been telling y'all about Ryan Anderson for so long now, for months. And now you see that teams are wanting to trade for him. So y'all can go ahead and give me my credit on that one. That man, Ryan Anderson, is like the truth at Sam linebacker. He improved his tight end coverage mightily. He improved his pass rush skills. He already came to the league with good edge setting. That's what he was known for at Alabama against the run. But now he's able to pass rush, force fumbles, and cover tight ends. So He's the ultimate Sam linebacker in my opinion, but I can honestly see a scenario where Thomas Davis starts over him just because of his veteran presence and his leadership and him having chemistry with Ron Rivera and how he wants his defenses ran and everything like that. And then at Mike linebacker, you have Shonda Hamilton, who's the smartest linebacker on the team, one of the best coverage linebackers on the team, and he's a great block shedder, just needs to improve his tackling. And then Colt Holcomb has probably the highest potential out of all the linebackers on his team just because of his speed. Excluding Reuben Foster, of course. Reuben Foster has the highest potential out of everybody. That's if he's healthy. But back to Colt Holcomb, his tackling is great. His sideline to sideline speed is ridiculous. He's just bad in coverage, and he's not a consistent block shedder. But once he's able to improve on those, he can be a ridiculous linebacker in this NFL. I mean, Ron Rivera has already complimented him and spoken about how excited he is to get Colt Holcomb on the field and see what he can do, coach him up and all that type of stuff. And then at will linebacker, you have Reuben Foster, who literally should be the best linebacker, at least in the NFC East if he's healthy. And Jack Del Rio already said that they're planning the defense around Reuben Foster being healthy. So that can keep us optimistic for the fact that he will be here. And then you have Khalil Hudson, recent draft pick, who, if he doesn't make the roster just from being a very versatile hybrid linebacker, safety, cornerback type of guy, which is very useful. I mean, a great chess piece. And if anything that this free agency has drafted showing you, it's showing you that Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera weren't very versatile guys. Kendall Fuller can play slot corner, outside corner, and free safety. Khalil Hudson can play safety, linebacker, and slot corner. Sean Davis can play free safety, strong safety, and a little corner. Cameron Curl can play free safety and slot corner and outside corner. So I'd be very surprised if Khalil Hudson doesn't make the team just off of defense alone. But then special teams wise, he could potentially be our most impactful special teams coverage player on the roster, period. I mean, not even just open field tackling wise and like kickoffs, but even punts. He has a knack to block punts, and I don't know where you gain that skill. I don't know where you practice that. I don't know what his coach has taught him, but for some reason he has a knack for blocking punts. And if that isn't a special, unique chess piece skill, I don't know what is. He blocked 5 punts during his collegiate career, and that is just so rare to find, so hard to find. And the fact that he has that, the Redskins need to keep that and use it as much as they can. And then you also have Josh Harvey Clemens, who was our best coverage linebacker for a while, but he just couldn't stay healthy. And then last season, in the offseason, he gained like 30-40 pounds so he could learn to be a true every down back, and I was excited to see what he would bring. He gained all that muscle, and then he got hurt before we could see what he could do. So even he's a possibility. And so technically, the Redskins kept 6 linebackers last season when they ran the 3-4, but that's when they had generally 2 linebackers, off-ball linebackers, back then named inside linebackers. But the term for all of them generally 3-4, 4-3 are off-ball linebackers. So they generally had 2 off-ball linebackers on the field at the same time, and they kept 6 on the roster. So if they were to keep 6 now or even extend it to 7, you have Ryan Anderson, Thomas Davis, Shonda Hamilton, Colt Holcomb, Reuben Foster, Khalil Hudson. That's already 6. And then it's between John Bostic and Josh Harvey Clemens for the 7th spot. But if they're only keeping 6, then it's Josh Harvey Clemens, John Bostic, and somebody else competing for the 6th spot. So it's honestly a little dark for John Bostic. And again, I don't hate John Bostic. I like him. He definitely was an upgrade over Mason Foster. But it's been proven through film from other teams that he played on that he's more of a 3-4 inside linebacker than any particular 4-3 off-ball linebacker. Because he's not exceptionally good at any of those off-ball linebacker positions, Sam, Mike, or Will. He's decent at all of them, but he's far more better suited for a 3-4 off-ball linebacker than a Sam, Will, or a Mike linebacker in the 4-3. Now, Ron Rivera and them did sign him to a cheap 2-year deal, but that's all he's gotten throughout his career. If he was as great as a lot of y'all have been saying in the comments of some videos, then his biggest contract wouldn't be less than $3 million in 1 year. And again, I'm not hating on him at all. I'm just being completely honest that there is definitely a chance he won't make the roster. It's not as likely as Trey Quinn, but it's also not as unlikely as Morgan Moses or Bryce Love or even Jeremy Sprinkle. He's somewhere in the middle, like pretty likely. But again, you know, if Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio go against everything they've done so far this offseason as far as draft and free agency, And instead of going with the younger, higher potential guys that can learn to grow, if they instead go with the safer guy, which is basically like the equivalent of going with Kyle Allen over Dwayne Haskins earlier in the season, then I would honestly be surprised. But I feel like they're going to go more of the Dwayne Haskins over Kyle Allen route for the entire roster. Go with the younger, higher potential guy and just let them learn on the go. And Jon Bostic is not one of those guys, to be completely honest. But yeah, man, that's it. That's my 5 players. Again, just to recap, Bryce Love, it would be very sad to see him go. And honestly, out of the 5 players, he would definitely be the saddest to go for me. Like, I would be distraught if we let him go. But again, I highly doubt it happens, but it's a possibility. Then you also have Jeremy Sprinkle at tight end, Trey Quinn at wide receiver, Morgan Moses at offensive tackle, and then Jon Bostic at off-ball linebacker. And like I did throughout the video, I just wanted to provide y'all how much the Redskins kept last season as a reference. But again, don't take it as set in stone that we're going to keep 6 linebackers like we did last season. Like we're going to keep 3 dedicated tackles like we did last season, or 6 wide receivers like we did last season, 3 tight ends like we did last season, and 4 running backs like we did last season. They might change, they might vary. You never know how Ron Rivera, Scott Turner, and Jack Del Rio like to run their teams and form their personnel. So it may not exactly be that. So I just wanted to use last year's 53-man roster setup as a reference for this one. But again, don't hold me to it. And that's the end of this video. I appreciate the view. Thank y'all for all of the support. Thank y'all for becoming members. Thank y'all for going out there and getting that Street Scores merch. I appreciate all the support. Please make sure you like this video if you liked it. If you learned anything, please subscribe if you haven't. Even if you are subscribed, make sure you hit that bell next to the subscription button so you get a notification every time I do something. Because I don't even spam y'all, so I don't see the reason not to do it. Every time I start up a live stream, every time I upload a video, you'll get a notification every time instead of every now and then. And again, the Air Coryell offense video will be coming out within the next 2 days. I appreciate the support. I'll catch y'all later. I'm out.